Welcome to another episode of Husky Trails. As we are starting mushing season, I thought I'd put together a video that might be interesting for people getting into the sport who are undecided between mushing their dog with a bike or a scooter. I often hear new people say that they think they are more likely to crash with a bike because a scooter is easier to ditch. So I thought I'd share my experiences and highlight a few differences. As a disclaimer, I want to say that I usually do bike joring, so I might be slightly biased. But this video is still meant to give new people an idea of scootering and highlight some differences that they might want to be aware of before getting into one or the other, or try both. I also did this with only one dog, and some of the things I address are less likely to be an issue when using more dogs or bigger scooters. So this was a small dog scooter that I had the opportunity to borrow from a friend. It was Diggler's Dirt Dog, which is an entry-level scooter for 1 to 2 dogs that can be used for smaller adults as well as for kids. Diggler was one of the OG dog scooter companies and is now Sprocket, I believe. There are a few other companies and their models range in size, performance, number of dogs and price. So there's something for everybody who wants to do this. I always use a bike rack on the car so that I don't have to put my bike in the trunk and fold the seats down. However, I wasn't able to mount the scooter on my bike rack because the scooter is missing the top tube that a bike frame would have. So I had to transport it in the back of the car, folding down the back seats. I found this rather inconvenient, and this would have actually been a problem if I had had more than one dog with me. I know that for step-through bikes, they make a connector piece so that you're still able to mount it on a bike rack. But since the scooter doesn't have a seat post, this was not an option either. So if you use a dog scooter, please let me know in the comments if there's a specific rack that you use or if you simply put it in the trunk. If you've watched my bike joring videos, you'll know that I use a bike joring arm to keep the line out of the front wheel. This arm gets attached along the top tube of the bike frame. But because scooters don't have a top tube, I couldn't use my regular attachment and had to rig something up with lines and carabiners I had in the car. So it's important to know that if you are thinking about getting a dog scooter, you will have to buy an antenna to hold your line. This will attach to the frame underneath the handlebar. However, the rest of the setup is the same as it is with bike joring. You'll need a line with a bungee section, and your dog needs to be in a mushing harness. I know some people shy away from mushing with a bike because they think they are more likely to fall. Personally, I actually felt more unstable on the scooter. While it might be easier to jump off, I found it way more difficult to hold my balance. One thing that bothered me was that my legs and feet were in a very stationary position on a relatively short and narrow board. And especially with winter boots, I felt almost trapped and actually had to be careful to not catch the rear wheel with the back of my foot. On the bike, I find it easier to move my feet and legs a little bit while still feeling very stable and balanced. Now, some people argue that because of the standing position and the way you pedal, a scooter is more similar to a sled. And while that is true, I feel that on a sled, I still have a wider and more stable stance and more opportunity to shift my weight around. My legs and feet don't feel quite as locked in on sled runners. But it's possible that with a bigger scooter that has a bigger footboard, this is less of an issue. So if you use a bigger scooter, let me know in the comments section what your experience with that has been. The other thing I noticed was that the scooter is very front heavy. With the bike having a seat post, the weight and center of gravity are more evenly distributed. And this is still true for bigger scooters as well. They often also have a smaller wheel in the back, which makes them even more front heavy. So when going downhill and braking with the scooter, I had to make sure to get really low and lean back to actually avoid flipping over. Another big difference I noticed between the scooter and bike was ground clearance. My gravel bike has 8 inches and this scooter had about 6. From what I've researched, dog scooters range in ground clearance between 2 and 7 inches and are averaging between 3 and 4. So a scooter, on average, will have significantly less ground clearance compared to a bike. Another aspect related to this is that the bike has an overall larger clearance area between the wheels due to the crankset being the only piece of obstruction and having more open space overall between the wheels. This means that you are a bit more flexible navigating around obstacles. A scooter has one long board going from wheel to wheel, so the low clearance area takes up the entire length essentially. With the scooter, I had to be a lot more aware of the size of rocks and roots and dips on the trail, and I had to zigzag around more than I would have needed to with the bike, I felt. So I think a scooter will do better on more groomed and slightly smoother trails. And I recommend that if you're undecided between mushing with a bike or a scooter, you take into consideration on what trails you would be mushing and how each would handle your specific trail conditions. I only had one dog when I tested the scooter, and I found that one dog is not a whole lot of power for a scooter. I had to pedal quite a lot for support and had to get off and push as soon as we hit even a slight incline. The scooter also gets a lot more unstable than a bike when going at a lower speed. Since I'm not doing this competitively or practice for any races with Laika, she's usually in a trotting gait, and she's also not always a very consistent puller. So I found that the bike is easier for me to keep steady and stay on even if we're going at a slower speed. That said, if you're planning on mushing with more than one dog, or if you are planning on mostly sprinting with your dog and your dog is a more consistent puller, this is probably not an issue for you. And just like bikes, dog scooters are also available in different frame materials that impact their weight. So for example, you can get scooters with an aluminum frame over steel if your goal is to enter in sprint races. After having been out with the scooter a few times, I personally prefer bike touring. Apart from the points discussed in this video, I also don't see any specific advantages a scooter would have over a bike really. The main things for me are that a bike is just easier to transport, and you can also use it outside of dog mushing. Plus, I think most people are likely to already have a bike and wouldn't need to invest as much getting into the sport. Both are a great way to exercise your dog and do something fun in nature together. I also realized that I might be slightly biased coming from a background of bike touring, and that I probably didn't have the best scooter experience with only one dog and a small scooter. I would certainly like to try this again with maybe 2 dogs and a bigger scooter in the future and see how my experiences compare. So what about you? Do you mush with a scooter or bike? Feel free to share in the comments if you have tried both and what your takeaway was. Or if you do scootering and can give more insight into the issues that I've encountered and what you think people should know about scootering that I might have forgotten. As always, thanks for watching and happy trails to you guys.
Good girl, all right. Oh, is it the stick that you wanted? Oh, was it the stick? It's an icy stick. You ready? Go get it. All right, oh, it's a stick. All right, oh, is my stick. Oh, is my stick. Oh, is that a good stick? 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 Okay, drop it. Good girl. Go get it. All right, oh, is my stick. Oh.